I've sat with people since I joined AOPA who've talked about how flight training largely hasn't changed a great deal. So I think we believed it's probably time to step back and in a very collaborative sense come together and talk about this and try to figure it out. So we believe it's the beginning of a very important conversation. But one of the pieces we wanted to really underscore, and I'm glad Mark is here with us, is to really talk about what we found out. So our energy is focused on where do we go from here, what are the next steps, and really how do we keep people engaged? How do we keep people attentive to this discussion because it's so critical to our future? And with that said, Mark, I'd love to hand it over to you.
As Rob indicated, I've done some work with AOPA in the past, and this was a very different kind of work. The research that I'm going to show you is really based on a pretty simple premise. It was not to find out what causes people to quit. I think those are, in large measure, pretty well known. Instead of a customer satisfaction approach to the work, what we wanted to do is based on the premise that if you align with people's expectations, if you're really meeting those expectations, you're more likely to have a more intense, more motivated student who will overcome certain burdens and move toward completion. So I will show you something that we do for a lot of our corporate clients around the world, which is actually a model of, in their case, reputation. In this case, we want to model the experience to identify the distinctive things that describe the experience, the important drivers of the optimal experience. And then we can ask ourselves some very basic questions. Once we know what those things are, which of those things are more important than other ones, and how well are we doing on those? And can we align the offer better with these key audiences? So it was quite an involved process. Jennifer Storm and I traipsed around the country convening focus groups where we talked to lapsed students, current students, pilots of varying degrees of experience, a good bunch of CFIs, even some flight school management, to really have an in-depth dialogue. And our purpose with them was to really push them. You know, what are the attributes? What does the right experience consist of? Be specific. Everything from, my CFI is professionally dressed to, the aircraft are of high quality, or they have up-to-date avionics, whatever that happens to be. So we worked up a comprehensive list of attributes that we thought were describing this for all these various audiences. What we do then is do a very large survey. This was a survey of 1,000, plus or minus 3 points, basically. And we put all those attributes, those 87 or so attributes, into this model and created a model that gives us the ability to go ahead and say, okay, where are we weak, where are we strong, where can we better align? And that's what I think is a more sustainable approach to the problem. In fact, people were quite clear throughout the process what the problems were. We want to see how we can build commitment.
Freedom through control. Cirrus has completely reinvented the personal aircraft and the entire experience of owning a personal aircraft. It's a bold new take on private aviation that we call Cirrus Flying 2.0. You set the schedule. You chart the course. You're in control.
Another interesting issue here is the reason for flight training. Fully 2/3 of the sample described their interest as primarily recreational. So at the outset, we have an obvious challenge. Recreation probably isn't the kind of intense driver towards success that some of these other things are, like wanting to be a professional pilot or for real live business reasons. So a big part of the universe that you're communicating with is going to be in a less motivated cohort. Where did you get your flight instruction? We asked, did you go to an independent 61 or Part 141 or something else? And this actually surprised me that a significant, over a third of these respondents actually got training through an independent flight instructor. The biggest single cohort here is operating in what is probably, not always, but probably the least structured training environment. That's an obvious challenge to talk about standardization and consistency in the way training is being offered. Now here's one of the more interesting findings. We asked then, generally speaking, did you have a good experience or not? And notwithstanding the fact that as we went around the country doing these focus groups, there were legions of complaints. CFIs just building hours on and on and on and on, and they went. And we're seeing the same thing here. You'll see in a minute that they complained here too, but In fact, people have a very positive experience, even those that drop out. You can see there, for example, that 92% of our lapsed students, the people who quit, had a very positive experience. Now, that's a bit of a non sequitur, but I think it speaks to the power of the experience, or to the key brand here, which is flying an airplane. Being trained to fly an airplane by yourself is a remarkably powerful experience. It's a different kind of experience. It's not boating or any other number of hobbies. So there's something unique going on here. And as you'll see later in the model, I think the way certain factors emerged here suggests that that emotional or that powerful element is in one sense, the missing link here, that we need to position the offering so that it's relevant to that very powerful motivation.
If you own a Cirrus today, or if you are considering the purchase of a new or used aircraft, consider this. Aviation, in conjunction with the country's leading Cirrus sales and maintenance facilities, has launched the G3R9 program that combines the purchase of a late model, low-time Cirrus aircraft and the addition of the Aviation Integra Release 9 avionics suite for much less than you may have thought, and certainly much less than purchasing a brand new aircraft. G3R9, combining the best airframe, best engine, and best avionics for the best value.
Now, this is the only part of this study that's kind of old-fashioned customer sat work. We just asked them, what was your experience like? Please rate these things, whether they're good or bad. So the percent very goods are expressed here. And you can see actually we're doing quite well here. So it's things like people are friendly, attentive at the school, the airplanes are ready to fly, the instructor was organized and professional, I can schedule lessons when they're convenient to me, my instructor is an effective teacher, part of a special aviation community. The green checked ones there are the kind of the social element that I checked here because it becomes important later in the study. I got good value for my money and everybody seems committed to my success. Well, we're dropping around to only slight majority, or in some facts minority, very good assessment, are in the areas where, in a sense, there are things that are relevant to the management decisions that are made at flight schools. So things about the quality of the training aids, the facilities. The school explained how much things would cost, so the way we're handling information to students. The condition of the airplanes, help in written tests, and then when we get down into they clearly explained how much time it would take to finish, and rates and prices were reasonable. You can see that we're actually dropping below 50. And what's noteworthy here is that it's really about the CFIs. You see the first two most powerful drivers here were that my instructor was an effective teacher and he was organized and professional. Other things related to some social aspects and some management aspects, some value aspects, also were statistically significant. The other things actually couldn't predict or weren't significant predictors of a good experience. Okay, so this is what we call open-ended questioning, where we just ask, what was the best thing about it to you? Do you remember? And they put it in their own words, and we code it into some sort of coherent codes. And this is, again, I think worth noting here, that it's just the simple joy of being in the air. Getting to fly an airplane is a very, very powerful motivator for folks. Quality flight instruction is important, but the ones I've checked here in green are noteworthy. We're breaking into significant numbers, but most of them, in my view, could be described as almost achievement-oriented motivators. That I got to do things, I got to learn. The things that we're learning were very, very important. This wasn't learning any old nonsense. This was weather and avionics and all kinds of important things. Confidence and achievement. Being able to fly solo, alone, by myself, was a real sense of achievement. And of course, the freedom and independence that's going on here. So that's worth remembering, and it makes a lot of sense to me given the way the model evolved, and I'll talk about how that happens in just a minute. What they didn't like, it is expensive. They didn't like having to pay all that money. A lot of here talking about, less than stellar flight instruction. When we get into the things that are less controllable, weather, it's hard to learn this stuff, scheduling conflicts, long hours, old equipment, poor aircraft, too many different instructors, which in the focus groups was just a lament. That CFIs just sort of cycle through, and I have 4 or 5 CFIs in my experience because they're just here building time, and they're not paid anything, and all that story that we heard in great detail.